Are you ready to sew the cutest frog hooded towel? Me too. All you'll need is a body towel, a hand towel, some felt that's the same color or close enough to those towels, some white felt, some black felt, and of course, your pattern. You can download the pattern at Belle by Jessi. There's an extra E on the Belle, not on the Jessi. That's Belle by Jessi. Then come back and meet me and let's sew this together. Our hood pattern piece is printed on 2 pieces. So the first thing we're going to do is trim out both of these and tape them together to create one pattern piece. Now we'll get our hand towel. Mine has a stripe on one side. I don't really want to include that as part of my hood. So what I'm going to do is fold it, not exactly in half, but I'm gonna fold it to that stripe. And let's see if I have enough space to get my hood out of this pattern piece. We can see right here on the bottom of our pattern piece, fold hand towel in half. I'm not quite in half, but place this edge along the finished edge of the hand towel. Do not cut this edge. And then this side is obviously marked as the fold. So let's make sure we can see this. And I do have enough space. I'm close, but I'm not going to get into that stripe. So I'm excited about that. So we want to put this edge along the corner here where we folded our towel. Now you can pin this in place, or you can get something heavy to put on top of it. I'm going to use my tape dispenser right here to hold my pattern piece in place while I cut it out. It's just a little quicker and a little bit easier. That's a trick we use sometimes in cutting rooms and sample rooms. All right, so let's trim this out. There we go. Let's move that to the side. And now we're ready to trim out our pattern pieces for our eyes and cut those out of felt. All right, for the body part of my eye, I have a straight edge, and I also have a straight edge here on my felt. So I'm going to use that. It'll save me a little bit of cutting. And for these small pieces, I am going to pin them in place while I cut them out. I need 2 more of these to make 4. So what I'm actually going to do now is use one of my fabric pieces as my pattern piece so that I don't have to pin it this time. So I've got another straight edge here. I'm going to fold it in half so I can use that straight edge again. I'm going to take my felt I've already cut out, lay it down, and it won't slide around. It sticks together. So I can cut around it without having to pin. The first thing we're gonna do on our hood is sew this top curved edge, back stitching at each end. All right, I forgot to point out that I am sewing on an industrial machine. So with my presser foot, I do have a hand lifter back here, just like you probably do on your machine at home. But I also have a way to control it with my knee, so you may see that that's different. I also don't have a backstitch button, so you'll see me reach for the hand wheel whenever I need to backstitch. All right, now moving on. As you can tell, this terry cloth is very ravelly, so we want to cover that up. We're going to do that with some double fold bias tape. So sometimes you'll see that your bias tape is not folded exactly in half. One side's a little bit longer than the other. That works great to put that longer side on the bottom to help make sure that you catch it when you're sewing. So what we're going to do is just open this up and sandwich it around our seam. No need to worry about this loose edge up here because we're going to cover that in just a minute. So we're going to sandwich that raw edge inside of our bias tape and stitch it around to cover all those raw edges. I do sew like a production worker, so I don't like to pin things if I can help it. So we're going to sew this. I'm not going to pin it. We'll see how I do. I am going to backstitch though. All right, let's trim that. Let's see how I'm doing on the back. Catching it nicely. Let's keep going. All right, before I get all the way to this end, I'm going to trim my bias tape a little bit long so that I can fold it under and make sure that even my bias tape doesn't have any raw edge. So I'm just gonna fold under a little bit, about 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch. Fold that in on itself, and it's okay if we got just a little bit of a tail on our hood here. It's going to be on the inside, no one will see it. And I wanna make sure that all those raw edges are covered. Back stitch here. Make sure I caught the other side. Yep, don't worry about it looking beautiful. We want it to be, just make sure that we don't have any raw edges. All right, so there's our hood. Before we add our froggy eyes, we want to cover this raw edge along the front also. So we're going to sew pretty much the same way. We're going to get some more of our bias tape. Again, if you do have one side that is longer that sticks out more than the other side, we want to put that on the bottom. This time though, we're going to finish both edges. So I'm going to take my bias tape, I'm going to fold it in about 1/4 of an inch or so, and then sandwich this raw edge of my terry cloth. So just like this. So I'll have no raw edges, just a fold here and then the finished edge of the towel. I'm going to sew this all the way across and back stitch at both ends. Our frog hood does come to a little bit of a peak here at the center. Don't worry about it too much. Your bias tape is made to curve around. Although I am going to trim this. I look like I left that sticking out a little too far. But your bias tape will kind of mold itself, that's what bias does, to your seam. So you're going to keep sewing just how your terry is cut. When you do get to that center seam, it can be thick, a little bit thick for your machine sometimes, so feel free to use the hand wheel to help you get over that if you need to. Before I get all the way down here, I'm going to cut off my bias, leaving myself enough to fold up to make sure I don't have raw edges, even of my bias tape. This time I am going to try to fold it up to where it will match and be a nice flush line. So let's see if I can do it on the first try. Going to fold that in. Oh, that's pretty good. I'm going to take it. So I've got it folded here. So I've got a folded edge on my bias tape lined up with this finished edge of my towel. Back stitch here. One more bit of tidying up on our hood, and then we'll get to add our fun little frog eyes. So we don't want our finished one to have this bias tape as the edge, so we're just going to turn it under to create a little hem. So on the outside, it'll look like it's just terry cloth. So on the inside, you're just going to turn under just enough for that bias tape to be on the inside. Stitch along the edge to create a hem. Back stitch at both ends. Again, don't stress yourself out about this little peak. Let your terry cloth and your bias tape kind of shape themselves along with that little peak. That gives our frog some of its shape, and both of these fabrics are flexible. So again, if you need the hand wheel to help you get over this hem, feel free to use the hand wheel. There's our frog hood ready for our cute little frog eyes. All right, so I'm going to rethread just my top thread in black to start my eyes. So give me just a second. Whew, I forgot to bring my glasses over here, y'all. I was worried about that. All right, but I got it through. We're going to take our eyes and we're going to sew the black part inside of the white part. So the black oval goes up and down on our frogs. That looks better for our frog to me than this way. But if you want to turn it to your frog, you can kind of decide how you want it to be. Mine are not perfectly cut. If you want to at this point, you can trim it a little bit with your scissors. It's felt. The beautiful thing about felt is that the edges do not ravel, so you don't have to worry about finishing the edges. But I would be a little bit careful about trimming off too much or you'll change the shape. All right, so I'm going to get mine set how I like them. I'm not going to pin these, but the felt sticks to itself, so it'll pretty much stay where you put it. So once I'm happy, I'm going to put mine under the machine and I'm going to edge stitch around the black as close to the edge as I can. When you get all the way back around, back stitch to make sure that's secure, and then you can take it out, trim your threads. Do the same thing for the other eye. All right, we're gonna get just one piece from each of our body eye pieces. So this is part of the frog's body that holds its eye, so it matches our towel, but it's gonna hold our eye pieces. All right, I just snagged that with a rough spot on my finger. All right, let me trim that off. All right, rest of that's good enough for me. So we wanna put these eye pieces on just one layer of our felt that matches our body. I am going to pin these just to make sure I don't swivel them while I'm sewing so that they kind of match each other. So I'm just going to put a pin right in the center. I'm going to quickly change my thread out to white thread, and then I'm going to edge stitch all around the white as close to the edge as I can. All right, I'm going to thread back to green, and then we're going to double these up so that they're 2 layers. All right, I'm going to put my eye piece on the back of the eye body piece. And it's not a sharp edge, but round about here on each side. We're going to start from here, stitch around this edge, and stop at the other side. What that's going to do is leave us a flap down here so that we can attach it to the body of our towel. So it needs this little flap on the front and the back. All right, so we're going to back stitch at both of those ends and stitch as close to the edge again as we can. If you have any spots that don't line up perfectly, you don't need to worry about them, but if you want to get your scissors and trim any of those little parts off, you can. All right, let's do the other eye as well. So cute. All right, we're gonna just finger press this flap back so that it makes kind of a little base. We're gonna do that on both eyes. And now we're gonna pin this onto our hood. You do have a marking on your pattern piece, but I always like to eyeball it on the hood that I have actually sewn. In sewing, things don't work out perfectly. Fabric can shift. We don't cut perfectly. We don't sew perfectly. So I just like to judge by what I have actually sewn. So I'm going to take a minute here to pin it, kind of check it, see how I like it. So I like the angle of my eyes, but I think I've got one eye a little bit closer to the center than the other. So I'm going to check that real quick. Yep. So I'm going to readjust mine a couple times if necessary to make sure that I'm happy with them before I stitch them onto the body. All right, I am happy with the look of my eyes. So you can pin the bottom or the back flap too. Let me stick a pin back there. We're gonna sew one flap at a time. I'm gonna start with the front because I've got it pinned just the way I want it. So we're gonna stitch as close to where it's folded as we can, and then come back down and make a little rectangle so that we're stitching that entire flap flat to the hood. And we only want to be stitching through the flap portion of this and the hood, so only through 2 layers. All right, I broke my thread. Oh, it's still through the needle. All right, so I set a rectangle, but that really isn't necessary. You don't have to sew this little tiny part. It's so small. What you really want to focus on is that we get both of those long lines stitched across. So I kind of ended up making a U. That's plenty enough to hold it on there. I'm going to come back in a minute and sew the back flap too so that it'll stand up nicely. But first I'm going to do the front flap on my other eye. Actually, first I'm going to trim the threads. All right, now I'm going to stitch the front flap on my other eye. So cute. All right, I'm going to stitch same thing on those back flaps to keep them secured to the hood and help those eyes to stand up. Ah. All right, I've got something too tight here. All right. Almost finished. Let's get this last flap sewn. Such a cute little frog face. All right, now what we need to do is attach it to our big towel, and we're all done. All right, so my favorite way to do this is get your big towel. I'm gonna flip it over this way so the tag will be at the bottom. So get your big towel, fold it in half, and find the center. Pinch that and hold it. Then you're gonna fold your hood in half, find the center, so same thing, you've got both pieces folded in half and you've got them pinched at the center. You're gonna match those center folds together, pinch the 2 inside pieces, and open it up, and now they're centered. You didn't have to measure a thing. So this I'm going to pin so that I don't accidentally slide it left or right. I want my hood centered across the body of my big towel. So I'm going to pin this, and then all we have to do is stitch the 2 pieces together. These edges are the finished edges of the towel, so we don't have to do anything to this seam, just attach them together. I will say though that the ends here I am going to back stitch twice, so they're going to be stitched 3 times because that is a bit of a stress point. So, well, that was silly. Why did I pin it that way? I want to sew it. I'm going to sew it on my hood side. All right, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I put my pins on the wrong side. Well, you can tell I don't pin stuff much, huh? All right, there we go. So this edge is going to get some stress, as whoever's the lucky person that gets this towel gets to wear it, dry off with it, enjoy it. So I am going to stitch, back stitch, and then back stitch one more time so that it's got 3 layers of stitching here on this end and on the other end. I had so much fun sewing this fantastic frog. I hope that you enjoyed it too. Please subscribe so that you don't miss any of our fantastic DIY projects, crafts, and gifts. Or for those times when you're just too busy to do it yourself, check out my shop. You can find me here, there, and everywhere online at Belle by Jessi. There's an extra E on the Belle, not on the Jessi. That's Belle by Jessi. And I look forward to sewing with you again soon.
And also like and subscribe. Yeah, so like and subscribe.
Thanks, boys.